Hi, I'm Colin. This is a brief workshop on making your own zines at home. A zine is a kind of booklet, homemade. It's a fanzine or magazine of sorts, and they come in all shapes and sizes. Zines have a long and interesting history, but in brief, they tended to originate with people or groups who were not well represented in the press at the time, marginalized voices of one kind or another. These groups or individuals would circulate their own booklets to get across their ideas, politics, beliefs, cultures. Feminism, riot girl punk, comics, science fiction all have a history of using zines. Politics and LGBTQ movements also have used zines, allowing them to express alternatives to what was being printed at the time. They're generally handmade, home printed, circulated in small numbers, usually for free. They were very often a way of giving a voice to the voiceless. There's no barrier to entry, no skills required. The cost to make them is absolutely minimal. Of course, nowadays we have the internet for that. So why is it that zines are still popular? For me, the answer is easy. It's the thing itself, the physical product. It's something you can hold in your hand. You can craft, make, give to other people. They can be a labor of love, just some fun for you and your friends. They can be about anything you are passionate about. You can give them to people. Spread your own gospel of music, ideas, beliefs, bad jokes, recipes, sport, politics, whatever you want. Even if you think that information is already elsewhere, that's not the point. Nobody is going to have that same mix of opinion, passion, creativity, and ideas that you have. The zine allows you to put a bit of yourself out there in the world. This workshop is all about showing you how you can make your own zines at home. I'll be covering 3 areas. First of all, the A4 Foldover Zine, which is by far the easiest type of zine you can make at home. All you need is an A4 sheet of paper. Secondly, I'll be having a look at the different ways of filling out your zine, different forms of content that you can use. And finally, I'll be having a brief look at the digital process of zine making, how you can use tablet, laptop, computer to help making your zine or to make it entirely digitally. Okay, let's get to the point. How do you make a zine at home? The answer is very, very easily. As already mentioned, zines come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. From large A4 type booklets, something in between, to the most common form, the A4 Foldover Zine. This one is by Irish writer Sarah Maria Griffin. I want to give a shout out to her. She does fantastic zines. And this is a great example of the easiest type of zine to make, the A4 Foldover Zine. Here's how you make it. All you need is an A4 sheet of paper, blank sheet of paper, just like you put in printer or photocopier. And you need to do some folding on this piece of paper. First of all, you need to fold it in half lengthways. You need to be careful and get the exact right folds here. Give it a good crease at all points. Crease along the edges. Then you want to fold it again, folding these 2 sides into the middle. Finally, you want to fold the paper in half, the other way. To make it easier to see on the camera, I'm going to mark those folds with a black pen. The next thing you want to do is to very lightly mark which each of those pages will be. Because you'll be folding this piece of paper up, the pages aren't actually going to be in the order you'll think they're going to be. So this page is going to be our cover. This is going to be the back cover. Then you turn it around and you'll number them. This will be page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And there you go. Now again, to show this more clearly, I'm going to put those in black pen. Cover, back cover, and you'll see these are upside down, and that's really important because they're going to end up upside down. And it's important to have those light pencil marks in to show you how the zine is going to look. Again, I've just done this in pen to demonstrate here. So once this is done, then you add your content to the zine, okay? You write, copy and paste, draw, whatever you want to do to fill in all your pages. So we'll come back to the content, but once you have your content done, you need to make one cut on your piece of paper and then fold over your zine. The cut you need to make is along here. So in the middle 2 pages, in the center, you need to cut from here to here. Now you fold your zine and you'll be finished. So here's how the fold goes. You fold it in half and you kind of squash these 2 pages together and then push it all in, okay? Like that. So I'll just show you that again. Fold it down in half and then squash like this and then fold like that. It'll make a lot more sense when you do it yourself. Then you have your completed zine. So you'll see cover, page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and your back cover. And how it looks with your content, it's obviously a lot better. Cover, 1, 2, the zine is mostly writing, and the back cover. When you finish making your zine, one final thing you can do, if you want, is to staple it. Okay? Now, one annoying thing about stapling your zine is you'll find that a regular size stapler will fall just short of being able to make it into the center to staple that center. Okay? So I had to buy a slightly larger stapler, and this cost, I think, maybe €6 or €7 to buy. And then that larger stapler will make it into the middle to staple the zine. So one staple in the center, just give it a little bit of extra stability. But again, that is not at all necessary to complete your zine, only if you want. Okay, now let's have a look at some of the different types of content you can put in your zine. A lot of the zines that I have are mini comics. That's just what I'm into. But you'll find zines of your own interest. So you can make a zine just a comic. There's a lot of examples of this, a lot of really good examples of this. Honestly, I think some of the best Irish comics that have been made are in a kind of a zine format. Black and white, simple, but with really powerful storytelling. Because zines were traditionally homemade, a lot of the time they tend to look sort of scrappy, cut and paste, homemade kind of an idea to them. So you just have a mix of media in there. Images, writing, things stuck in, pasted in, montages. One way of doing this is by getting some newspapers or magazines and cutting them up to make your own sort of little booklet. This is something I had a lot of fun doing over the weekend, a sort of a silly pastiche of Irish newspapers and magazines. And this is also a really good example of why it's important to label your pages, because I put this page in upside down. I had to fix it later on in Photoshop, which is a little bit of a nuisance. So for this scene, I've just sort of cut and pasted a lot of newspaper headlines and montaged them in together to make silly nonsense pages and headlines. This has got images and text mixed in together. This is a zine myself and my partner used to make every month, all about board games, which is something we're really passionate about, and had some comics in there, some essays, little illustrations. And this I mostly put together on the computer, but I used some illustrations there as well, some hand-drawn illustrations. I'm not a fantastic artist, but I like doing simple little ink illustrations to accompany zines. So you'll see really that the rule of thumb for the type of content you can put in your zine is whatever you want. You can use montage, collage, you can make zines of poetry, of short stories. You could write a short story or poetry and really play with the form of zine. You could get a newspaper and you could use that to make cut and paste poetry, blackout poetry, which would be a really interesting type of zine to make. You can make a recipe zine if you wanted. Personal stories, opinion, facts, statistics, diagrams, mini comics. You can do a mix of everything. If you wanted to make zines with your friends, you could take a page each on a particular subject and see what you come up with. Your zine can be a manifesto or portfolio of your own art, musings, or writings. Once you've completed your zine, once you have it filled in, folded, cut, then you'll want to make copies of it. Again, this is a copy I made at home using a laserjet printer, which isn't ideal. You want to use maybe an inkjet, or ideally get it photocopied in a printer's. Because zines are wonderfully one-sided, you can make copies of them for 10 cents at most. Every library has a photocopier you can use. 10 cents is the most you pay for a black and white sheet photocopied. So say for €2, you can make 20 copies of your zine. Your zine gets to be whatever you want it to be about. Although the porridge zine that I made does feature a recipe, it's more about mornings, mental health, self-care routines, things that are important to me. But again, your zine, you get to put whatever content and whatever mix of formats you want to put it in. Finally, let's have a brief look at the digital process for making a zine. You can use whatever program you want: Clip Studio Paint, Medibank Pro, Word, PowerPoint, almost any program you want, as long as you divide your page into those 8 pages. If you can do that, you can make a zine. Usually you can find a template for dividing your page into those 8 parts. Just Google Zine template followed by the program you're using. Zine template for Word, for example. You will find a ready-made template. If the template isn't labeled, it's very important to put those labels on the pages so they end up the right way around and in the right order. You will see in this template for Clip Studio Paint that I've actually included gutters in between the page borders. This is to leave space between the pages so no text or images gets lost in the folding. Most printers will put margins in the page edges, so you need to leave some room to account for those. Once you have your template laid out, you can start dropping in your content. Before I started making this zine, I had a ready-made folder of images I pulled from a Google search, and I had my content written out in Word, so I could just copy and paste in my images and text. And remember, when you're putting your text in, have fun with your font styles. Don't just stick to standard fonts. Mix it up a little bit, play around with the design. Really experiment. You can get some great looking pages. You can mash your images and text in together as well. The program I'm using here is Clip Studio Paint, but I also use Medibank Pro and Inkscape, both of which are free to download. Medibank in particular I find really great. Really, the software you use does not matter all that much, and there is no need to go paying for professional software. As long as you can make that template and it'll allow you to drag and drop images and text in, you'll do just fine. If you can't find a ready-made template, divide up the page yourself. Use the dimensions of an A4 sheet of paper and divide it into your 8 text boxes. It won't take you long to do, and you can save it for future use. This is a process of putting together the porridge zine I mentioned earlier. This is obviously a speeded up snapshot of the process, and it did help me that I had my text written out already. I think altogether in real time, this zine took about 45 minutes to put together. It might take some practice, but it is really worth it. And don't worry about things looking perfect. Zines are not supposed to look perfect. They should feel homemade, so let yourself make some mistakes. Don't try for perfection, just have fun with it. And again, one final thing you can see here that I've left some gaps in this zine. This is where I later added in some hand-drawn illustrations. I think the more styles you mix up in your zine, often the better it can look. Okay, that wraps up our workshop. I hope you learned something, but more important than that, I hope you're inspired to make something, to put something of yourself out there in the world. If you've never made a zine before, put aside just an hour and give it a try. I think you'll really like it. Thanks for watching.